Hey you guys, happy Wednesday. Sorry, just trying to get set up here. I've got Instagram going and Facebook going at the same time. So I'll be going from screen to screen here. That's my dog. You can hear him. Anyways, it is my third coffee with Carrie. So if you've missed them in the past, every Wednesday at 10 a.m., I have been going live. I started this 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and just talking about a couple of popular topics that I get with clients, that people I work with as a coach for the Faster Way, or just people in general that ask me about some of these things. So I thought, why not just talk about them live on here to help people understand some things and maybe learn something new. So anyways, today I wanted to talk about a popular buzzword, intermittent fasting, and some of the mistakes that I see people make, how people do it wrong. So anyways, if you are on this call and you are familiar with intermittent fasting, or you've done it in the past, comment below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on it. If you're currently doing it now, if you love it, if you hate it, I want to know. So definitely comment below and let me know. But before we get started, so just a couple of a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about what is fasting, like what exactly is intermittent fasting. We're going to talk about the benefits of it. And then we're going to talk about the mistakes that I see people make when fasting, and how it can actually work against you if you do it wrong. Not to scare anybody, but just to make you aware. So if you are thinking about doing intermittent fasting, or you're currently doing it now, just talking about a couple of things that just to make sure that you are implementing, or that you are doing, to make sure that you are not hurting yourself and causing the reverse effects of it. Okay, so let's talk about what exactly is intermittent fasting. And sorry, I'm just looking to see if there's any comments. Sometimes I have a hard time seeing on Facebook since they've changed. Okay, I don't see it. And I have to move my phone around so that I can see my computer. Okay, so let's talk about what is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is not a diet. That's the first thing I'm going to say. It is definitely not a diet. Intermittent fasting has been around forever. There's a huge buzzword with intermittent fasting. And the biggest thing I hear is, especially people that are not familiar with it, when I talk about how, I do intermittent fasting every day, they just think, well, then you just don't eat, do you? Like, you're fasting, you just starve yourself. And I'm like, no, that's actually not it at all. Intermittent fasting is it's simply an eating schedule. Our bodies are at digestive rest at a longer time instead of constantly being fed. And there's actually a lot of benefits to that, which I'll get into in a minute. But, typically with intermittent fasting, you have a feeding window and a fasting window. And there's several schedules that you can implement. Some people do a 12-12, where they are fasting for 12 hours and then they're eating for 12 hours. Some people, I myself in particular, do a 16-8 schedule, which just means I fast for 16 hours and then I eat for 8. There's some people that do a 20-hour fast with a 4-hour feeding window. And then some people even do a every other day type of thing, where they're fasting 24 hours a day and then eating the next day and then fasting again. I don't recommend that, especially to women. And then even the 20-hour/4-hour I don't recommend to women because our hormone profile is different, and you can really screw up your hormones when you do that. Men may be able to get away with it, but I don't recommend that for women in particular. And like I said, I usually do a 16 8-hour fast. So all that means is that I typically will, basically I'll skip breakfast. I won't eat until about 11 a.m. or noon. And then I will make sure that I eat what I need to eat between the hours of noon and 8 p.m. And then after 8 p.m., I don't eat anymore. I let my body go into a complete digestive rest so it can focus on other things, healing other things, rather than digesting my food. So, there's a lot of people that, there's no one size fits all with fasting. Everybody's different. I mean, it depends on you. It depends on your body. Some people do better with a 12-12 feeding window. Some people do better with a 14-10 fasting. It just depends on your specific needs. If you're pregnant and you're nursing, hypothyroidism, or even if you're diabetic, etc., there's a lot of things that go into determining what would work best for you. And of course, anytime you start something new, if you do have pre-existing health conditions, you definitely should check with your doctor before you jump into anything like this. So I just need to say that because I am not a doctor. So, but there are lots of benefits to intermittent fasting. Increased energy levels, less brain fog, better digestion, decreased insulin levels, higher human growth rate, or higher human growth hormone, reduced cravings, which is huge. The biggest one that people do is accelerated fat loss. So that's always a good one. And then there's this thing called autophagy, which basically means it's where your body can basically heal itself from the inside out. So all that means is that it can regenerate and repair cells. All the damaged cells are kicked out. So that does happen when you fast. And then a big one, and this is relevant for right now with COVID, is that intermittent fasting can actually boost your immune system. So great benefits. The biggest thing that fasting does is it will shift your body from being a constant sugar burner to a fat burner. So instead of constantly focusing on, when you're constantly in a fed state, when you're constantly eating, your body never really has the chance to tap into the fat stores for fuel. So when you fast, you burn through that glycogen. When it's out of food, when it's burned through all of the last, hey Carly, when it's burned through all of the last meal that you ate, instead of, constantly just burning through what you've just eaten, it's going to be able to tap into your fat stores and burn that for fuel. So that's where the magic happens with fat loss. For so long, we live in this society where we live to eat rather than live to survive. I mean, think about it. We go to all these events and things, and we always focus on, well, what food is there? What are we going to eat? And I think one of the things that fasting does is it kind of gets you out of that mindset and gets you focusing on living to survive, living to fuel your body properly rather than living to eat. You learn from fasting that you really rely on hunger cues for eating rather than when you are supposed to eat. So, eating when you're actually hungry versus eating when society tells you to eat, like eating breakfast or, eating 6 small meals a day. We've been told that forever, that that's what you're supposed to do, but there's actually no real evidence that supports that as being the best possible thing for you. So like I said, I mean, instead of constantly burning through sugar and glucose, we wait long enough for our body to really burn through that last meal and then focus on getting a chance to burning fat for fuel. So if you think about it like this, if you're always eating, your insulin is always up, which keeps your body from burning through it, and it will just continue to store fat. So in a fasted state, your insulin level is lower, and then you can use that fat for energy instead of storing it. So that's kind of the easiest way to explain it. There's a bunch of you that have just joined. I'm Carrie. I am a certified coach for the Faster Way to Fat Loss, and I have been doing these coffee chats. It's Coffee with Carrie every day on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. And I just talk about different topics that I get questions about from people, from clients, from people that aren't clients, so I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to jump on here and talk for 20 minutes or so about different health topics and wellness topics that I see that I just like to share and help educate people on. So welcome. Today I'm talking about intermittent fasting, and I'm talking about some of the mistakes that I see people make when they try to implement it. So that's where we're at. So I just finished up talking about the benefits of it. Now I kind of want to ease into some of the mistakes that I see people make. So too much of a good thing can actually be a bad thing. We know this with most everything, right? So the first mistake that I see people make is that they hear this buzzword, intermittent fasting, and they just do it. They just jump in full throttle. They don't do any research. They just do it because their friend Jessica's doing it and they want to be like Jessica. So they're just going to jump in and do it. They're not going to research anything. They're not going to figure out, well, what kind of fasting are you going to do? Which protocol are you going to use in particular based on your history and your background? They have no real education to back this up. So when this happens and people just jump in and they don't really have a clear plan, they don't have a schedule, you can really risk hormonal and metabolic disruption by doing that. Especially if you're not doing it correctly. Some people can just be too extreme, and women in particular, we can compromise our metabolism and our hormones. So going from eating every 2 hours to trying to implement this 16-hour fast can be really, really stressful on your body, and it can be really, really difficult. So it's really better to try and ease your way in rather than jumping in full throttle. Like, do a slow transition. If you decide you want to do it, you can start, but I would focus on just doing a 12-hour fast starting out and ease your way and work your way up. This way you are more likely to stick with it, and you're not going to stress your body out by trying to jump in and do this crazy fast that your body is not used to doing. The other thing that I see people do often is that they find, this is so easy, and it's so easy to just not eat. And then they stretch out this feeding window from, the 16-hour fast to more like 18 hours or 20 hours. And the problem with that is that, first of all, you don't need to do that. It's not necessary. You're just adding more stress to your body. And this actually makes it nearly impossible to get enough food and fuel when you are supposed to be eating, because you're decreasing your feeding window even more. So, I mean, most of the people I work with have a hard enough time hitting their macro goals, like how much they're supposed to eat during their feeding window. But when you're shortening it even more, it's going to make it harder for you to eat enough. And I'm going to get to this topic in a minute. But that is the first thing I see people just jumping in with no clear plan and doing it because their friend Sally's doing it. The second thing that I see people do is, and let me just make sure I don't have any questions on Facebook. Hey, Jeremy. Okay, the second thing I see people do is they don't hydrate enough. Water is so important, especially when you are fasting. The other thing is they're not avoiding sugary drinks. They're still having alcohol during their fasting window. They're drinking artificial sweeteners, and just they're actually breaking their fast and they don't even know it. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of different rules for fasting and fasting protocols, but the only way to know if you're truly in a fasted state is to do like a glucose test, which anybody can do. You just want to make sure you keep your insulin levels low, under 100. But I mean, what I tell my clients in the faster way is avoid sugar. Be careful when you're adding creamers and things to your coffee. Make sure there's no sugar in it. You don't want any fiber. And typically keep it under 50 calories. And then usually you're most likely still in a fasted state. But to really know, you could actually test your glucose level. And by doing that, the finger prick with they sell those little kits at Walmart you can get if you're really interested to know. And the other thing is a lot of people are still using artificial sugars. Those can actually spike your insulin. It's different with every person again, so that's why sometimes you would probably need to check your insulin level and see, or to make it easy, just don't have artificial sweeteners, and there you go. Alcohol is going to break your fast because alcohol has calories in it. It turns to sugar and it's going to spike your insulin. So, just pay attention to what you're drinking and making sure you're not actually breaking your fast. Even though you're not physically eating food, you still could be drinking it. So that's the other thing. And then obviously hydrating, drinking tons of water. This month we've been doing a challenge in our Faster Way VIP group, and my goal is to drink about 110 ounces of water a day. So if you know me, you guys have probably seen my picture. I have this huge jug. This is a gallon, and my goal is to try and get through 1 gallon every day. And let me tell you, I have never felt better in the last 3 weeks after drinking that much water and doing all the things. So it's really, really important. So make sure you do drink enough water. The third thing, and I kind of touched on this before, is that people that try and jump into fasting either don't eat enough or they're eating too much. Here's the thing. If you're not eating enough during that feeding window, you're going to actually make yourself really hungry. And some people call it hangry, because you're stressing your body out a little bit already. Fasting is a little bit of a stressor. But if you're not eating enough, it's going to make it really difficult to sustain. So there's a lot of people that will try fasting, but the problem is then they're not eating enough when they should be eating. And then over time, sure, it's easy starting out, but after a couple of weeks, your body is just going to get so hungry and you're just going to feel weak and tired and hangry. So if you're not eating enough, it's going to make it really hard to keep doing the fasting. Also, this can lead to binging and restricting, which is definitely not what you want. That's not what I want as a health coach. I want people to find food freedom. I want them to be able to eat for the right reasons at the right times. I don't want them to feel like they are restricting themselves and then binging during a food window. So that's one thing. And then, like I said, the other thing is, you could be over consuming. Say at noon hits, it's time to break your fast, and you just took down like 2,000 calories like that. That could be not so good either, especially if you're trying to lose weight. So the overall takeaway from my point here is that when you are fasting and you have a feeding window, it's important to pay attention to how much you're eating, hence tracking macros. Yes, it is tedious, but you would be blown away by how much you could be either overeating or undereating. And how would you know if you're not tracking? Tracking using MyFitnessPal, that's what we use in the Faster Way. The other thing is make sure you're eating the right types of foods. Some people use fasting as an excuse to eat whatever the hell they want. This is not good for you either. If you're eating way too many carbs, you're not eating enough protein and enough fat, that's not going to help you at all. I mean, the point is you want to make sure you're eating enough of the right foods for the right reasons. But of course, the types of foods are important too. So we don't want you to wreck your metabolism. We want you to make sure you're eating your protein goals. We don't want you to be way over in carbs. Just focus on whole foods, focus on the right foods, and start tracking your protein. There's a lot of women that undereat protein, and this actually is, they're missing out. And I talked about this in my talk last week, actually. It was kind of more geared towards strength training. But when you don't eat enough protein, your body is not able to build that lean muscle mass. And when you build that lean muscle mass, you are actually increasing your metabolic rate, which means your body is burning more calories. It's more efficient. So if you're not eating enough of the right things, like protein for one, you could really be missing out on a lot of the benefits of that. So my point is, make sure you're eating enough if you decide to do intermittent fasting, and track your food so that you know that you are eating enough. All right, so the next thing I wanted to say, as far as, mistakes I see, is over-exercising. We've all been there. I've definitely been there. You kind of get to a point when you're fasting and you're like, gosh, I'm feeling so good. I've got great energy, which more energy is definitely a benefit to intermittent fasting. Then you feel like, well, I can do more because I have more energy. And then you do more, and over time, you are really stressing your body out. You have raised your cortisol levels. You have a higher risk of having adrenal fatigue. And then the opposite happens. The whole point of intermittent fasting and doing all the things and working out was to, look good and lose that fat and whatever. Well, you have run yourself out of hormones, and now the opposite's happening. Your body is holding on to everything because doesn't know what's happening. You've completely stressed it out, and so now your body's holding on to fat. So that's the other thing. You have to be careful with how much you're doing. If you are going to exercise more, you need to fuel more for that. But that is definitely one of the mistakes that I see. Another one is people try and pair. Yep. Yes, I see you, girl. I do it too. Try training for an Ironman and doing all this. So I have to really be careful with how much I'm eating and making sure I'm getting enough sleep and all of the things. So it's hard, but you have to be aware of it, and you have to make sure you're getting enough fuel and you're getting enough rest. Okay, so the next topic I see is people try and pair a low carb diet with intermittent fasting. Low carb is okay for a short period of time. It can be very beneficial for some people. However, after a certain amount of time, if you are trying to intermittent fast and do all the workouts and do low carb, you are creating a lot of unnecessary stress on your body. Fasting, like I said before, is already a stressor. But if you're doing low carb on top of that, you're going to make it really hard to sustain continuing on that path. Like I said before, I mean, you're increasing your cortisol levels, and then obviously the opposite can happen. You're not getting enough of the nutrients that your body needs. So one approach that you could incorporate, and this is something we do in the Faster Way, is that we do carb cycling. So we vary our carb intake. It's not low carb all the time. We only do 2 low carb days a week, but we make sure we are eating enough of the other foods to fill in, so we're not under eating, and it just makes it so much more sustainable and easier to maintain for the long term. So then you get the benefits of low carb, but you're not screwing up your metabolism and messing up your hormone profile. The other thing is that some people overconsume carbs. Instead of low carb, they have too many carbs. And the thing is, a lot of people don't even know that they're doing this because they're not tracking. So if you're not tracking, you're eating whatever you want. You have no clear plan. You end up eating too many carbs, then your insulin level is going up. You're going to be hungry all the time. So that's going to make it non-sustainable as well. The other thing, and I'd mentioned this before, is when you're eating more carbs, well, guess what? You're not eating enough of. You're not eating enough of protein. You're not eating enough fats. Those things are important to build lean, healthy muscle mass, to rev up that metabolism. And then the fats are really important for your hormones. So the other thing is proteins and fats are going to help slow the release of carbs into your bloodstream. So you're not going to have those crazy spikes or the falls in the blood glucose levels when you're eating right. Another thing I see with people that fast is that they're not flexible. You get into this routine and then it's like, oh my God, I cannot eat until exactly 12:01, and oh my gosh, it's 7:55 and I haven't eaten dinner yet, and I guess I'm not going to eat dinner because it's out of my feeding window. I mean, come on, let's use common sense. You need to eat, so sometimes you're not going to be perfect, and that's okay. You need to be flexible, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Be flexible. Last but not least, the biggest mistake I see with fasting is that people are not getting enough sleep. And this is important for, everything. And I think I talk about this in every call I've done. If you're not sleeping enough, you are not going to have the fat loss. You're not going to see fat loss if you're not getting enough sleep. And it's as simple as that. You're going to increase your cortisol levels. You're going to increase your ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone. Your body is just not going to be able to repair itself, to recover, and then it's going to try and get more energy from food. So when those hormones go up, your body is going to be hungry, and then things are just not going to be sustainable. So sleep is vital to any type of health program or any type of anything when you're trying to get well, prevent disease, have more energy, all those things. You've got to sleep. Super important. So that is the last one. So if you're just jumping on here late, I'm going to post the call. So jump, replay it, rewatch it. But I talked about intermittent fasting, what it is, the benefits of it, And then the mistakes that I see people make when they're trying to incorporate it without having a clear plan or a guide or whatever. So jump back, watch it, leave me questions if you have any. Let me know if you've done fasting in the past, what your thoughts are on it. If you are interested in getting started into intermittent fasting, that's what I do. I'm a health coach for the Faster Way to Fat Loss. I run a 6-week program, once every month or two. And, I teach people how to do intermittent fasting, how to do carb cycling, all the things, how to track macros, and the benefits that I've had and seen in my clients and in myself in particular, because I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe that it worked, have been astounding. So I'm running another round. I have one currently. We started at New Year's, and my people are thriving. It's been great. So I'm running one more round. We're starting February 1st. It's 6 weeks long, and I'll teach you all that stuff. I'm your accountability partner. I check in with you daily. We have meal plans, we have daily workouts, all of the stuff. So if you're interested in learning more, click the link in my profile, and you can get registered there. And then, of course, if you have any questions, just let me know. But I'd love to help you out. So that's it for now. I hope you guys have a great day. I've gone over my 30-minute time limit, so I'm going to hop off and go reheat my coffee because it's cold now. So have a good day. Thanks, guys.